Hi, all. Kinsey Schofield here, and I'm so excited to be with Dr. G. Dr. G, you are so brilliant. I've spent like the last 48 hours of my life. I know your face. Like I close my eyes and I see your face watching all your videos on YouTube. Um, I love the way that you explain things. For for my audience sake, you did a great video on Prince Harry this
Thank you.
week. And here are some of the words you used within the first like 30 seconds, shockingly:
Mhm.
contempt,
Mhm.
stress. You talk about the smiling and chuckling and the idea of performative. When we talk about this BBC interview, can you take me back to that
Mhm.
first few seconds of that video, and can we break that down, how you saw so many emotions within the first few seconds?
So contempt is one of the easiest emotions to see because most emotions that are authentic are both sides of the face. So when you smile, it's both sides, frown, both sides. Same for pretty much everything. So when you see the corner of the mouth go up, kind of like that, usually it's a flash. Sometimes people can hold it there. There really is no other good explanation than contempt. So immediately, as soon as the interview started, you see Harry do that. 2 seconds later, he does it again. So there must have been a lot of feelings right there. Anything we feel is going to express itself in our body in some way or another. It's just a matter of knowing how to decode it. So he's somebody who was not very stoic throughout this. He showed a lot of emotion actually.
Oh, that's so interesting because over the last few weeks, his wife's done a lot of media, and you even talk about the shift in his posture or his facial
Mhm.
expressions when he talks about Meghan. But
Mhm.
in his wife's media, she's saying things like, "We're still in our honeymoon phase. I'm the happiest I've ever been." And then you watch Prince Harry's videos and you're like, there is no hiding that that person's not very content right now.
He looked very distressed throughout, particularly when talking about his family. That's what was so interesting about this interview is that what he was talking about through large parts of it were how concerned he is about safety and security and all of these things. But he didn't show any stress when talking about that. It was when he was talking about his family or talking about Meghan or talking about these various things. That's when you saw the emotions come up, when he thought that he was being treated unfairly because he wasn't given the security detail the same way everybody in the royal family typically would have. I don't know how to explain it, but in that issue that he had there, it was the unfairness that got him. It wasn't the idea that he's in danger, at least not from what I could see.
No, I love that. I love that you mentioned this because I wrote down while I was watching your video
Mhm.
that there is a shift in him when he's discussing people that aren't important as me get
Mhm.
security.
Mhm.
Like my initial thought there when you were talking about that shift in his posture, like he's stressing to the audience, do you realize that there are people that are less important than I am, that
Mhm.
get special treatment that I don't get? And I'm wondering, is this all, and you might not know this, but I'm asking for your instinct.
Sure.
Is he trying to convince people I need to sympathize with him? I should be on this guy's side because I cannot for the life of me understand why he did this interview.
I think so. That's what I at times when I talked about he would smile, it was to mask a lot. It's in other words to charm people. I think whether or not it came across that way, I think that was the attempt at least. And so I do think that when he would talk about these things, he would assume, and maybe he doesn't have a great perspective on some of these things, but he would assume, of course, if I say this, people are going to see my perspective. They're going to side with me. He may be a little bit lost in there. He may not fully understand how people are going to take some of what he said, but I think that he assumed that if I get this message out there, people are going to agree with me. They're going to see why would I be treated this way? It's everybody else's fault that I'm being treated like this.
What a bubble to live in, because I could understand it if he, this is me getting my royal commentator hat on. I apologize. I could understand it if he had spent the last 5 years working for charities
Mhm.
and had some tangible things he could tell us about. For the last 5 years, I did this in Africa, or I
Mhm.
did, but it's for the last 5 years, I sold a book about my family's secrets, and I have been kicked off. Basically, I had to step down from a charity board because the CEO says that I was causing problems or something, something to that effect. I've done multiple reality shows, multiple podcasts. There has been a real lack of contribution to
Mhm.
this life of 35 years, life of service that he tells us about
Mhm.
in the interview. which also like he's 40 years old, dude. Like
Yeah.
35 is
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
exactly were you doing at 5 years
Right.
old?
Yeah.
But it's like I just don't think he lives in the same world that we do. I think that he really believes himself.
Well, something that I think may lend itself to that is, and this is just my perspective, just my opinion, but Meghan Markle doesn't seem to be very authentic. I think there's probably a lot of people that can agree with that statement. And, when you're with somebody who doesn't come across as authentic, at least out in the public eye, I've never seen her seeming particularly authentic. And I think that when you're around that, you become a little bit of that as well. He comes across very differently than she does. But as you were referring to, that she's talking about, we're still in our honeymoon phase and whatever, she does have this air of inauthenticity. And I think when if that's who you're around 90% of your day, that affects you, I think.
That is such a good point. All right. So I love when you talk about the look of disgust when he says he can forgive the press because
Mhm.
he's mentioning everyone. I can forgive my father. I can forgive my brother. I can forgive my stepmother. And he's
Yeah.
like, I can even forgive the press. But there's like a legitimate change on
Yeah.
his face when he says, and it's also ironic because he's talking to the press
Yeah.
while he
It is.
says this.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts when you saw that?
It's such a specific look. It couldn't be anything other than disgust. And him saying that goes back to the performance idea. I guess he thought I should say this. This is something maybe that will go over well, but he couldn't hold it in because you wrinkle your nose, your mouth goes down. It's if you see something disgusting, your face automatically does that. There's several expressions that our face just does, like when we're shocked, like our eyes open, our mouth opens. When we have fear, our corners of our mouth goes down. Disgust is a very distinct look, and he clearly was very disgusted when he was talking about the idea of forgiving the press.
That is wild. Can I ask you about the performative smile you say that you see when he talks about being married to Meghan? I'm wondering if that performative, because when I was listening to you discuss it, I thought,
Mhm.
is this performative smile because he knows that the royal family doesn't like her, or he knows the press doesn't like her? What is the performative smile about there?
I would think it's the population at large that he's talking to at this point.
Mm.
That's what I think. That's what the purpose of this interview was. Is that it was to garner maybe sympathy or for have people to charm people into seeing things his way. So I do think it was interesting. If you watch, he'll go from smiling, doing this big smile, to immediately talking about something else, and it goes away immediately. So it's not a very authentic feeling, but he wants people to see that he thinks something. I'm trying to remember specifically what he said, but there was something that I think he wanted to come across that people were being frivolous about something or that it wasn't that important. So he smiles when he's talking about it. So I do think it was an effort because, well, let me explain it this way. When we see people smile that we like, we tend to smile back. So
Yeah.
it's not unusual at all that we do that in order to charm people, in order to get them to agree with us, to feel a certain way. So I think that there were certain parts that he definitely wanted to say. He went in there saying, I'm going to say this, I'm going to say this, and I'm going to say this. So I think at times he would do that. Or when I talk about Meghan, I'm going to do this because I want people to have this impression. So it's impression management, in my
Mm.
opinion.
Oh, how interesting. Does it say anything to you at all that he promised the BBC 10 minutes? These two are typically very
Mhm.
controlling of the press,
Mhm.
yet he gave them 30 minutes. Does that say to you that he wanted to reiterate so much what he had to say? Because he does repeat himself a couple of times about security. At the end of the day, this is just about security. Does it say, this has really been building up inside him? That's why he sat there for 30 minutes and unleashed. Does that give you any sort of idea of what's going on inside?
So my impression was that security felt like a safe thing to talk about because
Mm.
it somehow it's less uh, emotionally charged, maybe, or it's a different subject than talking specifically about his family in another context. So I think that there's probably a lot that he wants to say.
Right, let's dive straight in. Prince Harry's latest BBC interview. 30 minutes, some are calling it a bombshell, others, the final blow to any hope of a royal reconciliation. But what really happened in that room? According to forensic psychologist Dr. G, Harry's face did all the talking, and it was saying a lot more than his words. Within the first 2 seconds, yes, seconds, Dr. G spotted contempt. That's a little one-sided mouth twitch you simply cannot fake. He did it again, barely a heartbeat later. Harry wasn't stoic. He was leaking emotion everywhere. His stress and tension, not triggered by talk of security or threats, but by mentions of his family and, crucially, Meghan. Here's the kicker. Harry's calmest discussing security, the supposed reason for the interview, but bring up King Charles, William, or Meghan. His posture shifts, his face tightens, and out comes the performative smile. Big, bright, but gone in a flash. Dr. G calls this impression management, Harry trying, maybe desperately, to charm us into sympathy. But the act doesn't hold. When Harry says he can forgive the press, his face betrays him. Instant disgust, nose wrinkled, mouth downturned. That's not forgiveness. That's years of resentment boiling up, and it's raw. And while Meghan's out in the media, all smiles, declaring she's never been happier, Harry's body language is telling a different story. He looks lost, overwhelmed, even broken. Dr. G reckons Harry's trauma runs deep, not just from recent events, but from the loss of his mother, Princess Diana, at 12. Imagine losing your parent, then losing your family all over again. It's textbook self-sabotage, says Dr. G. By pushing his father away, Harry controls the loss. He can't be surprised or hurt if he's in control of the distance. But it's a lonely place to be. Let's talk about the security issue. Harry painted it as total abandonment. The reality? He can get full police protection in the UK, just needs to give 30 days notice, usually for official events. So why frame it like this? Because, according to Dr. G, it's a safe grievance, a blanket to cover up the real pain feeling betrayed by his family. And Meghan's role? Dr. G points out her public persona feels performative, inauthentic. Surround yourself with that energy, day in, day out, and it's bound to take a toll. Is Harry trying to convince us, or himself, that he's all right? The prognosis isn't rosy. Harry's unresolved grief, his apparent self-sabotage, his isolation, these are warning signs. Dr. G fears he's heading for a breakdown unless he's surrounded by genuinely supportive people, not just carefully managed PR. So, is Harry about to crack under the pressure? Is Meghan keeping up appearances while he falls apart? Or is there hope for healing if he finds the right support? If you've got thoughts, hit like, subscribe for more royal deep dives, and let me know in the comments. Is Harry trapped? Or is he on the verge of breaking free? Thanks for watching.